There in a column, I think, and it was in the LA Times. It was in the LA Times. I read a column where you're quoted, and you're going to have to correct me because I don't know if I'm 100% off on exactly where it is the bill is right now because it's amended and changed so much. Um, but this bill would shift the paradigm to make the public prove why they need the information. And that quote scared the living daylights out of me. And I'm in my thinking of cover up and corruption and misconduct in government. Is that being done, or was it? Because I'm not sure if it's still in the bill. You can tell us, but is that being done so that they can treat requests that are about them or their political allies differently than they're going to treat requests that might be about information that are about their political rivals? Or is this strictly trying to separate commercial versus non-commercial requests?
Well, that's the problem with the bill. The previous iteration of this bill, just briefly, what because of the intense blowback from the public, the press, organizations like California Common Cause, the First Amendment Coalition, it ran the gamut. Dozens of there were probably at least a dozen op-eds and or editorials against this bill when it came out in the Senate version, which put in which was the really really bad version of this bill. And one of the things, so what it did in that version is that it came out of the assembly simply extending the amount of time that an agency had to respond to a public records request from 10 days to 10 business days. And then they get extensions if they need it of 14 days. And that went from 14 days to 14 business days. Now, one thing I'll just note here is that agencies don't really need that extra time because even though they have an extension of 14 days, there's no limit in the law that says that they can only make that extension once. They can unlimitedly make that 14-day extension, and they often do. But besides that point, jurisdictions often just ignore that deadline. There's all kinds of stories where someone made a public records request and they didn't get it until 5-6 months later. So this idea that they need more time, it doesn't really pass the smell test for at least members of the general public, because that part is just generally ignored anyway in a lot of instances. But what this bill also did when it came out of the assembly and made it into the Senate was it introduced this idea of commercial fees or commercial intent, which was very vaguely defined, which would have essentially said that if your public records request has anything to do with helping you make money or part of a business, then we can charge you two separate fees: a $22 administrative fee and a $66 per hour, and a $66 some other fee. I can't remember what it was. So I mean that fee structure. One, how do you determine what a commercial request is? That was not defined, and I can get into that in a little bit. But the other part it did was it said that if we think that your request is malicious, we can take you to court and sue you. So it's doing multiple things here. It's letting the government agency decide who is making a commercial request, and it's also so which essentially comes down to intent. They're getting this. They're asking you, why are you making this request? And that was part of the bill. In order for them to determine whether you were making a commercial request, they had the right to ask you what is your purpose for making this request, which is absolutely antithetical to the California Public Records Act. And so you would have had to provide information about yourself, and you could have been scooped up anyway if they thought that you were going to be using this in some way to make money. As a journalist, maybe, even though there was a journalistic carve out, what about freelance journalists? What about someone who is doing the investigative part, but they don't have a publication yet? All of these things come into play and allow the government to now be the gatekeeper. And by the way, we just have to trust them. We have to trust them that if they're going to charge you $100 an hour, that they actually only worked 2 hours, and not 24 hours. And so you set up a system where if you want to, you can weaponize the Public Records Act request against your political enemies and make it so burdensome and so expensive that you just those people are shut out of the government process. And so, to answer your question, this would have set up a system that it would have extremely chilled public records requests in California, and it would have essentially given government agencies the right to decide who gets information uh, based on why they want it, and that is just wrong. And that's a very, very dangerous concept to even be playing around with when you're talking about um, the public's right to know and participate in government and in a democracy. And so, often, again, a right is not a right is not meaningful if exercising it exposes you to a government lawsuit. And that's what this would have done.
Yeah, I worked opposition research 25 years ago for a candidate once, and I went to go pick the voting card for his opponent, right? Him and his wife, and to see if they had voted. And the guy, you could go up at that point and just walk up to the clerk's office and they would just pull them and show them to you. You can get copies if you wanted. And I looked at them and I said, "Oh, can you double check that's not the wrong, that's it's got to be the wrong person?" They're like, "No, it isn't." I'm like, "No, double check." He goes, "I don't have to double check. I know why you're here. That's them. It's open. I can't stop you from looking at them." He goes, I don't care one way or the other. I know what you're here. I know it's the election. Those are the right cards. And I'm like, the person never voted. Had never voted in an election before. Was an immigrant, I think Cuban immigrant, had been here for some time but never voted. I'm like, this election's over. He's like, yes, it is. Right? But that happened because I could get access and the guy couldn't stop me. If I had to tell him, hey, I'm working for a campaign for this congressional candidate, if he didn't like the candidate, he would just said, no, come back, get out. It can't be filtered by the political allegiance of anyone involved. It can't be. I'm sorry, if the government's doing bad, it needs to be out there. If the public's doing bad, it needs to be out there. That is just the way it goes. If commercial companies are finding ways to make money off of this information, then government, why aren't you, one, doing it? If it's malicious, that's one thing. But if you could just provide if public wants to know, put a database out there to let the public know, then there's no need for the commercial company. Right?
Yeah.
You've won the argument early on because you're running them out. If you can give them information you have, give it to them, they turn it into a database where the public wants to pay to get it. It's just mind-boggling that they would do that. But their reaction, instead of just being more transparent and saying, hey, let's serve our people better, let's just close everything off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and malicious, that phrase caught me, because if there's ever a political turn of phrase, like, I understand what everyone thinks, but unless you absolutely define it to the nth degree, that is going to be misused. It is just going, right? Because a political officer sitting in office and someone requests information about them or their operation is going to make them look bad, they can easily determine it's malicious. And if letting it out is going to really hurt them, then they're better off fighting it to the nth degree on the public's money to stop it from coming out.